Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you're launching a new product line,
Whether you're a private label partner or a really passionate startup.
right, you know that the single largest hurdle standing between your brilliant brand vision and, the consumer shelf is almost always the formulation.
Oh, absolutely.
Developing a truly stable, safe, and effective cosmetic base from scratch is a massive, multi-year investment in R&D. But today, we're deep diving into the workaround.
The workaround that powers the fastest growing brands in the industry.
Ready-to-use, or RTU, cosmetic formulas. This is your superpower, allowing you to skip the base development and jump straight to the consumer-facing differentiators.
Things like the specialized actives, the unique scents, the packaging, the story.
All the stuff that actually sells the product.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is to give you the most efficient shortcut possible. We've synthesized a ton of material on RTU, focusing squarely on the practical knowledge.
So we're going beyond the generic checklist.
Way beyond. We want to understand the why certain bases have different limitations, why documentation is so critical, and what are the non-negotiable practical steps for testing, scaling, and most importantly, achieving global regulatory alignment.
It's a classic trade-off, isn't it? Speed to market versus, say, proprietary innovation.
It is.
But what you gain from leveraging these high-quality RTU bases, reproducible results, batch after batch, drastically simplified compliance, and just sheer speed. It often outweighs that initial concern about using generic ingredients.
It really does. You're starting on third base, not home plate,
You buy back time and stability.
which are arguably the most expensive commodities in this entire industry.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start by mapping out the formula landscape.
Yeah.
The market generally breaks down into skincare, color cosmetics, and hair care.
Right. And the structural integrity required for the bases in each category is just fundamentally different.
That's a crucial distinction.
It is. So let's start with skincare. When you get a high-quality facial moisturizer base, what you're almost certainly dealing with is an emulsion.
A really complex structure of oil and water bound together.
Bound by emulsifiers, exactly. And the design priority here is stability under temperature stress and, delivering barrier-supportive hydration. You're looking for a base that's been tested for compatibility with the big players.
Like hyaluronic acid, certain vitamin C derivatives, or peptides.
The ones everyone wants.
And here's where the structure dictates your limits, right?
Yeah.
The source material gave us some pretty specific active ranges for this.
It did. A moisturizer base can often support a wider active load. We're talking typically between 0.5% up to 5% total actives.
And the reason for that,
Yeah.
the why, is because the emulsion has both an oil phase and a water phase.
Precisely. It can physically encapsulate and stabilize higher amounts of certain oil-soluble actives. You just have more places to hide and stabilize your payload.
Okay, so contrast that with a serum base.
Totally different beast. A serum base is usually a water-heavy gel or solution.
So it's lightweight, fast penetrated.
High water content. But that structure also means its compatibility window is much, much tighter.
So a lower active range.
Much lower, often restricted to 0.5% to 3%. If you overload a high-water gel base with actives that don't easily dissolve in water, you risk precipitation, clouding,
Or total instability. The whole thing could just fall apart.
complete failure. And the compatibility check becomes super technical, especially if you're integrating low pH ingredients like highly effective AHAs or unstable retinoids. The base's pH buffer has to be absolutely robust.
Because if that pH drops too low, you don't just lose efficacy.
No, you can trigger separation and destabilize the whole product, a total loss.
Wow. Okay, so moving into color cosmetic bases, the focus shifts.
It shifts completely to aesthetics and sustained wear. For a foundation cream, the challenge is uniform pigment compatibility. That base has to keep the colorants dispersed evenly across batches.
And it has to be consistent whether it's in a hot warehouse or a cool bathroom cabinet.
Right. And for lip or eye bases, the safety stakes are even higher.
Because of the sensitive application areas.
Of course. So you're looking at stable colorant suspension, sure, but also film-forming polymers for longevity, and critically, safety checks to minimize things like pigment feathering or migration. You don't want consumer irritation.
And what about hair care?
Hair care is a world of rinse-off versus leave-on demands. A high-performing shampoo base has to balance powerful cleansing using surfactants with mildness for the skin and scalp.
And because it's high water, it's a perfect environment for microbial growth.
Which means it needs a really robust, broad-spectrum preservative system.
And the conditioner base is the opposite. It needs maximum slip detangling.
Right. And the ability to hold beneficial ingredients. So you have to vet its compatibility with cationic polymers, natural oils, humectants, all while making sure it doesn't leave a heavy residue.
So it's a real balancing act.
It always is. And now that we get the structural demands, we need to talk about the selection process itself. Choosing an RTU base isn't a simple purchase.
It's a qualified strategic decision.
Exactly. And our source material structured this into the 7 pillars of sourcing evaluation. These are the criteria you need to ensure the base you select is actually scalable and safe.
This feels like the critical framework. If you ignore any one of these pillars, you're introducing a huge amount of risk into your supply chain.
You really are. So let's walk through them.
Okay, let's start with the immediate chemistry check.
Pillar 1, base type and compatibility. So you confirm the fundamental type. Is it an emulsion, a surfactant wash, a gel? But the deeper insight here is checking compatibility, not just with your actives.
But with your packaging.
Yes, your chosen packaging materials. Many polymers and airless pumps can react chemically with certain preservatives or fragrance components.
And that can cause leaching or pH drift.
And it can totally ruin that expensive 24-month shelf life before it even hits the shelf.
That is a detail I think most small brands miss until it's a disaster. So, pillar 2?
Pillar 2, preservative system and safety. You need broad spectrum coverage, bacteria, yeast, mold. But you also have to ensure the system is compliant in all your target markets.
And this connects back to customization. Does that system still work when you add your specific fragrance or colorant?
That's the key question. Sometimes a seemingly stable additive can just neutralize or interfere with the base preservative.
Okay. Pillar 3.
INCI coverage. Transparency is just non-negotiable today. A complete international nomenclature of cosmetic ingredients declaration for the base is crucial.
And the practical consequence of not having that, it's severe.
Oh, it's catastrophic for a startup.
Yeah.
If you launch with inaccurate labeling and a regulatory body finds a discrepancy, the consequence is often a full product recall and mandatory relabeling.
It turns a small labeling error into a financial extinction event. Okay. Pillar 4.
pH range compatibility. This is the linchpin. You have to confirm that the base's pH is stable and that it can gracefully accommodate the target pH you need after adding your actives.
So if your active is a powerful exfoliant that needs a pH of 3.5,
but the base's structure only tolerates dropping to 4.5, you have a fundamental chemical mismatch. It's a non-starter.
pillar 5, stability and shelf life.
And you can never take this on faith. You must request containerized stability data or accelerated aging indicators, often called challenge tests.
So if your product is going to hot climates, ask for the data at 40 degrees Celsius.
Exactly. Shelf life for RTU typically runs between 6 and 24 months, and that data informs your entire inventory plan.
Right. Pillar 6 is regulatory status.
Know your market. You need the official classification for the US, the EU, the UK, and the requirement for a cosmetic product safety report, the CPSR in the EU, dictates a totally different documentation approach. We'll get into that.
Okay. And the last one, pillar 7.
Cost and availability. This is pure unit economics. Focus on cost per kilogram, the supplier's minimum order quantities, or MOQs, and their reliability.
And you have to insist on a certificate of analysis.
Always. Insist on transparent COAs for the base. This documentation ensures traceability and confirms the quality of the raw materials in the base you're buying.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me making the formula yours. You've selected a stable base. Now you have to customize it without triggering the instability you work so hard to avoid.
This is where a lot of brands slip up.
I bet.
The watchword here is meticulous documentation and handling. When you're adding actives and ingredients, you must verify solubility and compatibility with the base's inherent chemistry.
You gave an example earlier with vitamin C.
Right. Certain oil-soluble vitamin C derivatives, they need specific stabilizers to prevent rapid oxidation and browning, whereas something like niacinamide,
Which is highly water-soluble.
usually integrates easily into the aqueous phase of an emulsion. But even niacinamide can cause viscosity thinning if you add it at high percentages too quickly.
And you have to maintain robust batch records for all of this. Lot numbers, COAs, for your specific additions, the exact percentage.
That traceability is your legal defense.
Okay, next up the sensory layer. Fragrances versus essential oils.
Fragrances offer incredibly consistent aroma profiles, which is vital for brand uniformity, but they mandate rigorous allergen labeling disclosure.
And if you go with essential oils,
They have to comply with strict IFRA standards and be added at extremely safe maximums to minimize sensitization risk. But a strategic insight here is that the fastest growing niche is often just fragrance-free.
Which boosts accessibility for the sensitive skin craft.
A huge market.
Then you have the visual aesthetics with colorants.
Here you have to select additives that are regulatory compliant, and again, check for stability. Pigment migration, where the color bleeds out of the base, or pH sensitivity are major risks.
Especially with natural or mineral colorants.
Especially. And consistent dispersion during mixing is absolutely vital to prevent streaking or color inconsistency across batches.
And all of this is underpinned by pH adjustment.
And this is not an area for estimation. You need calibrated pH meters. You have to use validated buffers, acids, or bases only when necessary. And every single post-adjustment reading and the amount of buffer used must be recorded in your batch records.
Because failure to document those interactions
is the fastest way to cause phase separation later down the line when the product is in transit.
So all of this careful work leads directly into the regulatory landscape.
And this is where understanding market requirements becomes a strategic tool, not just a compliance burden.
And if you're looking at the major markets, the difference in approach is massive. In the U.S., for example, regulation focuses on safety and labeling, but there's no mandatory pre-market approval.
Right. The burden is on the manufacturer to prove safety and substantiate claims if they're challenged.
It's a reactive system.
Very reactive. Contrast that sharply with the EU, which imposes much stricter, proactive oversight.
They have the mandatory Cosmetic Product Safety Report, the CPSR,
which forces brands to complete a robust safety assessment before the product even goes to market. It's a completely different philosophy.
That distinction, reactive compliance versus proactive safety assessment, that's the core principle.
It is, and industry guidance across all markets is now emphasizing adopting proactive safety assessments and transparent ingredient declarations, and that's largely driven by consumer demand.
Radical honesty.
That's what people want.
So once safety is confirmed and documented, how do we successfully scale up? The leap from a stable bench sample to a, say, 5,000-unit small batch production requires some really robust protocols.
It really does.
So first you have to solidify your QC and documentation.
And a huge part of that is keeping retention samples, a small sealed jar from every single batch produced. This acts as your physical archive.
In case a consumer complaint or a stability issue comes up months later.
Exactly. And you need a clear change control process. If you change a supplier for just one ingredient, that necessitates a documented reevaluation.
Okay, and what about the practical steps, the hardware?
Well, scaling demands investment in infrastructure. You need cleanable equipment, ideally high-grade stainless steel or food-grade plastics, and strict sanitation protocols to eliminate cross-contamination risk.
Especially for water-based products.
Especially. You also need strong supplier relationships to predict lead times and manage those crucial MOQs we discussed earlier.
And the scaling itself has to be staged.
Always. Always start with a pilot batch, a small production-sized run, then a rigorous QA checkpoint before you commit to increasing the volume.
The source material had a perfect example of this.
It did. A small batch brand combining a high-quality moisturizer base with 2 carefully selected actives, a stable antioxidant, and a powerful humectant.
And they documented everything. The pH adjustments for the antioxidant. Then they tested the final product under accelerated conditions.
Specifically 25 degrees C and 40 degrees C simultaneously.
And by confirming consistency, texture, and stability across a 1,000-unit run and verifying that the preservation system held up.
They were able to verify a guaranteed 12-month shelf life in their amber glass packaging.
That example really embodies the entire roadmap. Start stable, customize meticulously, test rigorously, and document everything.
That's the formula.
So we've covered the roadmap for selecting, customizing, and scaling RTU bases responsibly. And it's important to remember, the market is not static. It is being shaped right now by consumer demands for clean beauty, for vegan formulations, and the unyielding expectation of transparency.
The final comprehensive takeaway here is that the benefit of RTU formulation is undeniable speed. But that speed is meaningless if it compromises safety. The only way to move fast and remain secure is through unyielding traceability protocols at every single step. Lot numbers, COAs, and mandatory information that ensures you can audit your product from the retailer shelf all the way back to the base supplier.
Absolutely. And this raises the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, one built entirely out of the regulatory realities we just discussed. Given the significant differences in oversight between the U.S. and the EU, especially that mandatory CPSR in the EU might a small batch maker, prioritizing speed to market, strategically leverage proactive safety documentation like detailed patch testing guidance and robust COAs to build consumer trust globally, regardless of the regulatory minimums in their immediate market. Think about adopting the stricter global standard as an intentional marketing advantage, not just a hoop to jump through.